If you want to be the winning bidder when you buy a house in Catonsville, there are a handful of techniques you need to understand before you start writing offers. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the actual tools inside a real estate contract, the levers you can pull to make your offer stronger. Price is only one of them. So let's walk through it. First, a little about Catonsville. Catonsville is different than a lot of suburban Maryland markets. We don't have a lot of new construction neighborhoods. We're dealing with brick townhouses in Academy Heights, bungalows in Oak Forest, and Victorians in Old Catonsville. Many houses were built in the 50s and 60s, but there are much older properties that date to the turn of the century. They've got character, but they've also got older systems. And because Catonsville is a relatively small market, inventory is always tight. We generally see between 30 and 60 active listings in the entire 21228 zip code, so good houses are always competitive. Understanding how offers actually work becomes really important. So here's the toolbox. When you write an offer, you're not just choosing a price, you're building a package. And inside that package are a bunch of different tools you can use to make your offer stronger. Let's go through them. Tool 1 is your lender. The strength of your lender matters more than people expect. First, there's the difference between being casually pre-qualified and being fully pre-approved. And that letter that the lender writes should be specific to the property and the offer amount. I always recommend a local lender who's been in business for over 30 years because when the listing agent happens to already have done business with them, they've got confidence that the transaction will close. And there's also the practical reality that listing agents are going to call lenders to try and get a feeling about the strength of the buyer. You want someone on your team who will talk you up and let the agent know what a strong buyer you have. That matters. Because when a seller chooses an offer, they're not just choosing a number, they're choosing the deal they believe is most likely to close. I've seen situations where my buyer wasn't the highest offer, but the financing felt more solid to the seller, and that tipped the decision. So lender strength is absolutely one of the tools. Tool 2, earnest money. Earnest money is another signal. It's not extra money, it's just your deposit, but it shows the seller how confident you are about moving forward. If one buyer puts down $5,000, and another puts down $25,000, the seller reads that as commitment. I represented the seller in Westview where the two offers were very close, and the buyer with the larger earnest money deposit ended up winning because the seller thought that buyer was more serious. Now, that doesn't mean you should push beyond your comfort level, but it's definitely one of the levers inside an offer. Tool 3, price and escalation. Everyone understands price, but escalation clauses are where things get more strategic. An escalation clause says, if another offer comes in higher than mine, I'm willing to beat it by a certain amount, up to a cap. And that allows your offer to stay competitive without guessing the exact number you need. I've seen escalation clauses work very well. I've also seen buyers lose because their cap was just a little too low. And I've seen buyers escalate higher than they needed to because the competing offer wasn't actually that strong. But escalation is a useful tool. Like everything else in your offer, it works best when you have some context about the competition. Tool 4 is appraisal gap coverage. This is one that shows up a lot when the market gets competitive. Let's say you offer $525,000 on a house. If that appraisal comes in at $510,000, the bank lends only based on that appraised value. So the question becomes, who covers the difference? An appraisal gap clause says the buyer will cover a certain amount above the appraised value if necessary. I had a deal where my buyer included the gap coverage in their offer, and that gave the sellers confidence the deal wasn't going to fall apart if the appraisal came in slightly lower. And it ended up helping us win. But this tool has to match your financial comfort level. It only makes sense if the numbers work for you. Tool 5 is inspection strategy. And this one is especially important in Catonsville because these houses are older. You have a few different options when it comes to inspections. You can keep a full inspection contingency just as it's written in the contract. You can limit your repairs, either by capping the amount you'd ask for, or by setting a minimum so that only the larger items would be eligible for repairs. You can do an inspection for informational purposes only, or in some cases, buyers waive inspections entirely. I've won deals using informational inspections because the seller knew we weren't going to come back with a long repair list. But I'm generally cautious about waiving inspections on older houses, unless the buyer understands exactly what they're taking on. Again, it's a lever, but it's one you use carefully. Tool 6 is closing date. This one surprises a lot of buyers. Sometimes the seller's timeline matters more than squeezing out a few extra $1,000. Maybe they need 60 days before closing. Maybe they need something faster. I won a deal in Foxhall Farms where we weren't the highest offer, but our closing timeline matched the seller's plan perfectly, and that flexibility made the difference. Tool 7 is rent back. A rent back allows the seller to stay in the house for a short period after closing. And in Catonsville, where a lot of sellers are moving locally, this can be extremely helpful. Gives them time to coordinate their move without trying to line up two closings perfectly. When structured properly, this can make your offer more attractive without changing the price at all. And Tool 8 is a clean contract. Now, this one sounds boring, but messy offers make listing agents nervous. Clear timelines, minimal unnecessary addenda, everything in order, organized and professional. A clean contract signals that the deal is going to close smoothly. And certainty is something sellers value a lot. So the big takeaway here is that winning a competitive house isn't about pulling every lever. It's about understanding the tools and using the right ones for that specific situation. Sometimes price wins, sometimes certainty wins, sometimes timeline wins. But if you understand these techniques before you're in a competitive situation, you're in a much better position when the right house shows up. And if you're thinking about moving to Catonsville, I actually made a full video that walks you through what it's like to move here, what the neighborhoods are like, and why so many people end up choosing Catonsville. So check out that video right here, and I'll see you around town. My name is Matt, and I help people buy and sell houses in Catonsville.